So I would like to invite the other set of speakers. First of them is Pavan Karthick, who has given a talk in the morning about how malware research could be connected with threat intel. Then we have Mr. Gaurav Gogia, who works on a similar topic, and then his research has been very famous on LinkedIn if you'll follow him. Then we have Ms. Palak Bansal, who gives talk like gave a talk on how Mac OS could be hacked. Then we have Mr. Farhad Sajid, who partnered with her and told us how to hack DLLs. And then finally, we have Mr. Ravi Rajput, who told you how to hack cars. So I guess all of them are great at what they do. All of them know how malwares work, how to create them, how to hack systems. And we are in for a lovely panel discussion this time. Guys, a round of applause, please, for all the speakers. All right, all of us use Google, Microsoft, Apple, Chrome. A major fact about these is these are the organizations which actually produce the major amount of CVs. If any bug bounty hunter out there, they know how much they have reported to Hall of Fame or these bug bounty programs of Apple, Google, Facebook. Only fact which changed between these and smaller companies are these companies are a little transparent about how much they get hacked and they have a public registrar, and then smaller companies don't. But then this still tells us that our data is not actually secure with them. So I'll take opening comments. What do you think? What should be the alternative? Are we should we still continue using all these apps, or should we go to open source or something? Anyone?
Okay. Hope I'm audible. Yeah. Okay. See, if you take Man, okay, or let's put it in a more broader level, the Fortune 100. Okay.
Right.
So if you see the environment they have created, it's like a must part of life, right? No one of us can imagine our life without any of these companies' products, whether software as a service, platform as a service, or any kind of product they have, not being involved in our life in any other way. We can't imagine that, right? So when we say like that, we are going to transit from this products to that of the open source build out of community, that transition, chances are very high, is not going to happen. And there is a reason why. First, let's talk about the legality of it. Okay. Earlier, I also didn't used to think in that perspective, but recently, due to certain events, a certain discussion, then I came to know, okay, this is a very hardcore reason. Now, when you see open source community or the open source products or the resources that are out there, they are falling under either MIT license or the GPL, right? On the other hand, when you are talking about products from this Fortune 100, 500, or 5,000 companies, they have to go through what? SOX, GDPR, PCI DSS, tons of European laws, UK laws, and whatnot. And those are very stringent laws, right? They fine like hell, right? If something goes here and there, right? If something goes out of the line. So, if you think in that particular perspective, which one you will look forward to? I'm keeping it as an open question for the audience, to the product which is having MIT or a GPL license, or to the product which has some background that in case something goes wrong, there is going to be taken some severe actions is going to happen, or something is going to happen to penalize it, which will be the one which people will prefer for. Obviously, something that has a regulatory body, something has framework,
Policies.
something which is being governed by, right?
Yeah.
So that is the first point I wanted to. I will let other speakers bring up more point, but yeah.
So if we digress from the topic, it also comes in, will you prefer closed source or open source? But then, yeah. All right, so if we look at it, Google Chrome, which is like the most used browser, released 8 critical CVs, which was allowing RC. So if you look at it, if I am using Chrome, or all these people are using Chrome, and the threat actor is real good at it, he would have been able to compromise all of our systems. But then if you look at the XZ CV which released, where a person was able to hold access to that open source repository for an year. And then no one knew, although that same repository was being a requirement for all of these systems again. So the scope of both of these are like huge.
So there are two parts of it. First is privacy. Privacy and security. Both are completely different. So if you believe you want privacy, you would never use Chrome, right?
All right.
And even there are vulnerabilities. Like it doesn't matter for you because you believe you want more privacy than any of these. And then you'll use private browsers, maybe like Tor or something along those lines. But again, if you use or like lean more towards the privacy, usability also reduces, right? Because why do they even have all those tracking mechanisms which collect data and then share across the data? I mean, it's mainly to help you get to what you want, right? I mean, sometimes it's very scary because you search for something on Google, the next thing which Amazon shows is the same product what you want. I mean, that scares me a lot. And not only searching, you speak about it and then it pops up in your ads, right? So that is a privacy there. So how many of us even read terms and conditions? We just
Yeah, too
scroll
long,
down
too
and then
long.
accept everything, right? So even that is the main point where you should understand what is privacy for you. Like what data do you want to share? I think there are specific organizations which help you get to understand your own privacy, like what data is out there. So that is the main important factor. And then, I mean, everyone who uses a phone, right, our data related to our spending habits, even though our phone claims not to collect it, it will have the data in your device. Your privacy is the data being with you. All those CVEs which Mudit talked about, so these CVEs are a hazard to your privacy, but it's not directly affecting.
All right. So it basically means if you want privacy, you will lose ease of use. And if you want ease of use, you will lose privacy. Like if you get ease of use, you want quick sign in, you want no OTPs, you want like I open the tab, I get access to my system, you'll have high ease of use, but then your privacy would be low. And if you switch it, if you want high privacy, you would have to set up 10 different things. You would have to open a VM, then you would have to run it through Tor, and then finally you would have 2 kbps internet speed, and then finally you would be able to open Facebook.
So I think let's there's a quality factor to the product that we're going to use. Of course, privacy is important. However, a lot of time open source products, they suffer from lack of quality. Not always because the developers who are writing the code are not good, but sometimes because there simply isn't enough money. Money is one of the biggest motivators of writing good product, creating good software. Because, well, let's say there is a person who is writing software, they have dedicated their life to it, and they're building great things. However, even the most funded open source developer may not be able to match up to, let's say, some giant like Microsoft. It's a $1 trillion company, and regardless of how much we say that Windows is bad, it's insecure, well, in some ways it is true. There are so many vulnerabilities, even in the most core and important components. So let's say if we talk about common logging file system, it is it's a core security mechanism within Windows. It handles all the logging and all the event logging and everything, all the events that it creates. However, unfortunately, it has been so much optimized for performance that it lacks security. However, the same company is also pushing the limits of cloud because they have a lot of money to put into research. This will be extremely difficult to do through open source software. So here you have to have a trade-off. Do I want high quality product backed by a big company which will guarantee its existence throughout many years, many decades? Or are you going for an open source product which may or may not always be maintained? Also, there's a myth that surrounds us where we think if it is open source, must be very secure. And as Mudit correctly said, XZ, it completely shatters our idea where we think that open source means secure, because the threat actor was there for a very long time. And there might be so many more threat actors in a lot of other libraries. Okay, so you all remember SolarWinds? So supply chain attacks can happen anywhere. And I think it may be a little bit easier with open source libraries because, okay, open question. When was the last time you looked into node modules to see which transitive dependencies which modules are they
Gaurav, you have to
downloading?
explain what nodes are, what are transitive.
Oh, so Node is a runtime engine for JavaScript. It runs on the server. If anyone has developed web applications here.
So it's Node.js, the node part.
Yes, Node.js. Be it Node.js, Python, .NET, Java, how many of us go to see which libraries that we are importing and which libraries they are in turn importing, how long this chain goes? There's an entire industry built around it. We call it supply chain security. Have you guys heard of SBOMs, security software bill of materials? Look into that. It's super important. You need to know what kind of libraries you're importing, which libraries they are in turn importing. Because you may not be using Log4j, which is vulnerable to Log4 shell, but some library internally might be vulnerable to Log4 shell, which can eventually make your application vulnerable. A lot of security products suffer from this. I don't want to name the names because they are big. They're very big players and really big security vendors. And while they are patched now, a lot of times they use outdated libraries as well. However, since they have time and enough money, they are very proactive and they patch it, and they have to do it because, as my fellow speaker mentioned, they're bound by some license. They have to do it. In open source, they're like, meh. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow. It is possible. So I think it is difficult to identify what are we optimizing for? Is it quality, or are we optimizing for more freedom and privacy?
Right. Is it also connected to the scale of these applications? Let's say Windows has a lot of features, but then if I look to a dumber open source OS, it would have less features, and hence it is less prone to attacks or more secure because it has less functionality added to it.
I think you're 100% correct. Sometimes certain features do make things a little more insecure. So there's this feature in NTFS called alternate data streams. That feature essentially enables data smuggling. So it is a feature. It is a good feature. It was well thought out at the time. And it was done for macOS and Apple files related compatibility. It can be used to leak data out of organizations. Of course, it is signaturized now. Of course, we can catch it. Post-incident forensics can be done on top of it. However, it still is a feature that can be actively exploited to leak data.
So Ravi sir, should we go back to Maruti 800 or should we buy that XUV 700? Ravi sir is left. Or should we go back to Tanga? We should right? Like horse.
Nokia 3300.
3300.
Right? That is great, sir. So this will be the always fight, right? Like if you are advancing, okay, you are deploying, like you are writing a code, okay. If you make it open source, or if you make it if you keep it closed source, it's okay. Okay, open source have a great chance of a supply chain attack. Look at the past, right? But the thing over here is what is the adoption rate? Are people adopting it? Are people using it? So, as my past experience is, like I had worked as a vulnerability researcher. Okay, I had write 0 days. We are more attracted to those softwares where we can target to the mass, right? So that is the case, if it's obviously if your software become kind of a famous and people adopt it, you are at a risk.
So it's I read this somewhere that threat actors were focusing more on Apple products now because higher net worth individuals are using those, and hence they are more valuable. So like if I want to attack C-level executives, instead of making a malware for Windows, I would rather make a malware for iOS. And it's not like iOS is more secure or Apple-based OSs are not secure than Microsoft just because there are less malwares available for it. It's like
Correct.
researchers have spent less time developing malwares for Apple OS than Windows, and hence we see that.
Correct. So look at the Pegasus spyware that happened, right? Why it targeted WhatsApp only?
Yeah, makes sense.
Adoption rate.
Adoption rate. Why would I make a piece of malware or let's say anything which caters only to this niche amount of people when I could hack all of them just by like hacking Chrome?
I didn't get you.
Like same, I'm just adding to your point. I would rather make something which caters to a lot of people than to a niche amount of people.
Exactly.
So should all these organizations create their own set of softwares because I don't have the software publicly available, it is by obscurity secure.
So basically it becomes your own responsibility. If I'm making a software, okay, if I'm making a software which is open source, right, and it is growing so fast, now it becomes my own sole responsibility that I bring people for the contribution. Second thing, if there is a vulnerability being reported, I become like I patch it as soon as possible. If this attitude changes, right, which I see in most of this, because if I see any kind of a severe vulnerability in the Linux or any of the binaries used in Linux, it hardly takes 4 hours to patch.
Is it?
It is real. Like it hardly takes 4 hours to patch. Okay, but if you take example of a Windows, it takes days. Okay, I have a mentor. He's quite famous. I would not name him. He have a couple of 0 days on Chrome, but he will push later on, like one by one. Because he want to earn money.
They want
right?
power.
Yeah.
Right. So the solution would be to either create your own tools or like forget privacy.
Yeah, and take responsibility.
Okay. So if I want to like keep myself secure, I would install an open source and then take responsibility of its security on my own self, or I'll outsource it to Microsoft. They would do a better job than me. Is it that decision we have to make?
Yeah. Anyway, like if you rely upon Microsoft or if you're using open source, your security is your responsibility.
All right. So if you claim that Windows is less secure or Mac OS is less secure, it's your own responsibility. Make a wiser decision. Like security lies in your own hands. Okay. What about privacy in all of these things? Like, are these organizations helping us in any way, or like are these the Achilles heel for us?
Okay, I think I won't give a straight answer to this, but I'll maybe share a story and then leave the audience with a question in the back of their mind to think about. So we all know that US visa is one of the most difficult visas to get in the world, right? There are a lot of rejection rates there. So while filling the visa application for any country, I'm not only talking about any particular company, they ask a lot of documents, a lot of information of us to be shared with them on their government website, not Indian government website, their government website. They'll ask us to share our ITRs, our bank statements, passports, and other personal information. Now, as I was reading through that, how another government is validating my data that I am submitting and how they are trusting me to allow to enter their country, by providing the visa. So as I was reading and researching, it was clearly mentioned that government of India or any country's government will not share our data with the other government. Only thing is that they can validate those documents that we are submitting. So example, if I am sharing my bank statement as part of the application form, the other country's government will come back and ask my bank, okay, is this your issued document? Can you validate the authenticity of that document? So bank will do that and say yes or no. Yes, I issued that document, or no, this is not my document. Somebody printed it at home, made that document and printed it at home. This can be done. But the question is the other party, other government or other authority trusting my country's government's data or whatever the second party is saying, are they trusting their information blindly? and given, I don't know, given the history, it's kind of difficult to digest that one party is trusting other parties, validation blindly. They are not doing any background check on their own, just trusting the words of the other party. So, like all the panelists, co-panelists told that we are everywhere. I'm using Apple products, I'm using Google services, I'm on Twitter. My information is everywhere. All these entities, is by any chance this party using my data that is available on these platforms and using it to cross-check who I am as a person? Do I have any, police complaint lodged against me in my country that I'm trying to hide or my country is trying to hide? Are they using the data that is being available on these, on these platforms? Even though I signed the privacy agreement with them not to share, that they'll not share my data with anywhere, with anybody at any cost, but still are they doing it? How are they validating me as a person? How is it being happened? How they are issuing me a visa? Just by trusting some other party's words, validation? Are they not doing any background check on their own? So this has been tickling me in the back of my head, how it's happening. So if anybody knows,
can I
let me know.
start my own country and start helping Indian citizens get visas to the US?
That's not possible, no.
Is it?
If this would have been possible.
Solomon Islands by Mudit, something like that. All right, so this still come back, are we still secure? Is this all a myth that all this technology has actually made us more publicly exposed? All our data is more publicly exposed, even though we take the best countermeasures possible, use Mac OS instead of Windows because it's more secure. And still, we would still find our data exposed? Or is it more because of us that we download that pirated Windows and then we get compromised? Should we be spending more money to get better security, or is it a duty or job of someone else?
It's a collective responsibility as discussed, right? So you shouldn't be downloading any pirated software. Neither they should be breaking the privacy agreement, sharing data with others without your consent, as well as keeping their system secure.
So I would take closing notes from everyone now. What do you think? Are we exposed publicly on the road?
Just to add up on that, pirated software, majority of us are security practitioners. How many of you know a guy named Dr. Larry Lau?
If you have done web pen testing, if you call yourself a VAPT expert, you must have.
That sums it up, right? If you know that guy, so more or less somewhere or the other, your data is obviously available. So yeah.
All right, opening questions. If anyone wants to add something, wants to ask something. Yeah. You need to ask. Sure, after that.
Hello. So I'm Akash Kharade and I work as a security consultant. So one of the speakers said, right, we must not use Chrome, but we should use a Tor browser or Tor.
It was a suggestion, not must.
Suggestion.
Yeah, sure.
But to my perspective, it is until you have a lot of time, anything is hackable, right? We see 0 days in almost all softwares, right, today. So it's not about Chrome or Tor browser, right? Anything is hackable. So.
All right, so you need just motivation to get into something. That is what the crest is. If someone is motivated enough that he wants your data, he'll get it, unless you start destroying it. Okay, we have a question from backstage, please.
Yeah, so we talked about the open source thing, and 90% of the things kind of are on GitHub, and it is owned by Microsoft. So now what's the reason that we are still doing putting so much efforts? A good view would be really good. So I want to know your opinion. Microsoft is owning 90% of the thing.
See, one thing is that I kind of feel that there is a bit of a wrong consensus being made that if a company is owning a product, means that it has a control over that. And I will tell you why. Yes, in the nutshell, it's a product of Microsoft, so whatever Microsoft will say, it has to do. But I will give you a scenario. GitHub is something that is used by majority of the organization out there, right? Correct? Now, think of it this way. Let's say XYZ company, which is a Fortune 100 company, has partnered with Microsoft that, okay, I'm going to utilize GitHub repositories or GitHub services, GitHub Enterprise or something. Now that XYZ company, will it allow Microsoft, because it will host its code and everything related to staging, related to development, related to anything, okay, in the GitHub, so that it can pull down, integrated with the CI/CD pipeline seamlessly, right? Now, will it allow Microsoft or any other third-party provider to have accessibility to that randomly without doing some background check or understanding the policies, access controls, and all the legality frameworks and whatnot? Will it allow? No, right? Hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
I mean, to add to that point, I mean, all the GitHub repositories, right? If it is public, there is a right for you to get that data too. So, I mean, there might be a slight chance that a lot of actual companies scrape the whole GitHub and get the public information. And Copilot is built on top of GitHub's data, public data.
The public one is correct. So that's the reason why it is public, right? I was talking in the context of the private repository or the enterprise-owned repository, but again, in enterprise, the public one, that is that.
So it's like Gmail having access to all of our emails and we are reading. Someone at Gmail is like filling in OTPs for us.
I mean, supposedly private should be private forever. Even if enterprise, even GitHub is not supposed to be able to see that. That's why end-to-end encryption is there, right? That's why WhatsApp says even we can't access the data. And then WhatsApp might pull out of India if Indian government actually sanctions WhatsApp to remove the end-to-end encryption or have their own encryption, right? So that's how WhatsApp tries to protect your security. But in US, I mean, they have subpoenas to basically let, I mean, it's not only for WhatsApp, any organization, right? If US government like subpoenas them, like even Apple, I saw this multiple cases where unlocking an Apple device solves a very heinous crime. So does Apple need to do this? Like they have lawsuits running over this. They will do it, but their question is, if you do it once, it will not stop the government from asking it to do it again.
It's like the big daddy is the biggest problem instead of small threat actors. It's like if the government wants to see it, they'll see it, and you cannot do anything about it.
I mean, it's not something like that. It's that it is secure enough to protect your privacy, but they will be able to do it. It's like you are the key maker, right? You'll still be able to break the key.
Break the lock.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So, any closing comments? Like final? Anyone else wants to add something? All right.
Hello, hi. So I had a couple of points. I think one that was raised regarding the MIT license. So I completely agree with that point that Fortune 500 companies or well-established companies are answerable to certain regulatory bodies. But if you just look into the past, that we have seen time and again these companies violating these policies. We have instances previously of Facebook, Microsoft, different companies breaching them and then cases running on top of them. And I think the penalty on them are the fines, which I don't see it being that much of an impact. For a $1 trillion company like Apple, I don't think $1 million fine would mean anything.
No, they would.
Exactly. So the point is that even after having these policies in place, these companies still end up doing breaching these policies. So would then the argument still be valid of the MIT license versus the GDPR compliance? So that's the first question. And second question was regarding the open source libraries, open source products and their quality of use. I think that's a very fair point. There are multiple open source products which don't match proprietary qualities. But there's also, I think, like maybe could be wrong here, but I think there's also a different side to it that there are certain open source products which are pretty good. Like and competitive to Chrome is the Brave OS. It's a very well-known OS. It's kept up to date. It's based on Web3. And operating systems for that matter, whether it's Kali Linux or whether it's just Linux right now. We don't have a commercial alternative to that as widespread as that. So maybe quality of use is not that well for all open source products, but I believe there are certain few which do give a good fight to proprietary. So just wanted to know the views of the panel
So
on
we
that.
will take the MIT versus GDPR question later.
Sure.
I'll quickly wrap this up. So what we have discussed is that your security is in your hands. If you want privacy, you have to lose ease of use. And then while you download a software, make sure you are making an active decision of choosing that software. It's not that software's responsibility of securing you or keeping you privacy and safe. You have decided to do that software as is. If it has those vulnerabilities, it's your responsibility. If it is secure, it's again your responsibility.
One last point. So Chrome has its own open source version, which is Chromium. So which is used by multiple other browsers built on top of Chromium, like Brave browser, let's say. Brave actually offers you a better privacy than Chrome. Why? It blocks the trackers. You can rewrite your own code, compile it, and it becomes your own Chrome. And then let's say vulnerabilities. I mean, you still have time to find out like maybe 10 vulnerabilities which comes up in the next year. But no one, like we are not AI to read millions of lines of code, remember everything, and understand each and every context, and expect this to be a vulnerability too, right? So it's the crux of time, or it's basically a, let's say, at the point of time, someone who looks at the code might find out that this is happening. And then that's how, like any vulnerability it is, right?
Fair.
Yeah, so even I have seen that if you ask, ChatGPT or Claude or Copilot or something to write a code, they write vulnerable code. First thing. Second, last take on this. Don't download the pirate software. Crack it your own.
Makes sense. Yeah.
You will
are a
learn.
security researcher, no malware researcher. You claim on your CV that you are a malware researcher, you know reversing. Crack it on your own, launch it. All right, that's it from our side. Thank you guys. A round of applause for the speakers and for the lovely audience. Thank you.